Imagine your final stand against an army of thousands of monsters and ghouls guarding the outskirts of your city. Your one and only mission is to break in. Imagine toiling and ripping through demonic threats by the hundreds, armed with nothing but a shotgun and a pistol. Now, imagine doing that without any sound to help you. Go into your options menu and turn the music and then the sound effects all the way to 0 and then try to play. It's much tougher than you think. No audio cues to indicate that you've successfully defeated a boss or accomplished a mission. No dynamic shifts in the game's theme to tell you that you've entered a hostile zone. This is how ubiquitous audio design and music has kind of become in developing modern games. It's something you aren't trained to pay attention to, but once someone takes that away, everything you're doing just becomes dulled and flattened. It didn't always used to be like that though. Audio design and a good music score usually took the back seat to concept and playability. The memory capacity of earlier systems didn't really have the power to blast an 18-man orchestra through your speakers like we do now, so most of the tunes you heard were just usually a simple few notes. But one of the first examples of a dynamic music score predates even this. Video game composer Tommy Tallarico explains, if you remember in Space Invaders, as the ships started to come down and as they got closer and closer, the music got faster and faster. There was a study that took the person's heart rate while playing, and as the ships got closer and the music got faster, people would start to panic. They would do the same studies without the sound, and people wouldn't panic as much. It's a primitive example, but it's probably one of the first glimpses we've ever had into the potential of music and how it contributes to a game's atmosphere. This potential was realized by earlier video game composers like Jack Wall, who demonstrated that a synergistic relationship between the music and the events in the game was not only possible, but arguably necessary. Especially now that the large memory capacity of the CD-ROM gave developers much more leeway with what they could do. This was evidenced through Wall's work with games like the Myst series, and then later on in other games like Max Payne, Deus Ex, and probably the greatest recent example, Mick Gordon's soundtrack for 2016's Doom. Game developers slowly began realizing video game music was far too integral to the foreground of a game to be prioritized as low as it was. Hiroki Kikuta's music score in 1993's Secret of Mana has probably one of the most innovative uses of audio design for this time, specifically his work on the introduction sequence of the game. The game's intro screen had a noticeably hard time starting up and loading quickly. Kikuta's response to this was to take the music of the intro sequence and lengthen the first note, gradually heightening the music to match the intro screen slowly fading into frame. Kikuta even went as far as using a stopwatch to time the music with the fading in of the intro screen as best he could. This subtle synergy between audio and animation became somewhat of a trope for RPG and fantasy games, where the music gradually faded in as the intro screen slowly did the same, until finally the music score reached its apex during the full reveal of the screen. Video game composer Yoko Shimomura worked extensively on the World of Mana saga as well, and even composed the first video game theme with real organic vocals for Legend of Mana on the PlayStation in 1999, whereas many parameters were set hard in place thanks to the limited memory capacity of the SNES. The following generation of consoles had no such problem, and composers like Shimomura found comfort in the additional flexibility. Whereas most modern action or shooter games are accompanied with different variants and derivatives of the same dynamic theme to match the pace of the action, Square Enix's music often incorporated leitmotifs, or variants of a single music theme to personify a character's emotion and story progression. Now, when considering the use of music in film and in cinema, things like leitmotifs and recurring themes in music is really nothing out of the ordinary. Jaws did the same thing in 1975, with the iconic crescendoing and speeding up of the soundtrack as the ever-present danger of the shark made itself more and more known. but the interactivity required for video games made composing soundtracks for this branch of media very difficult. That's why, even in recent titles, dynamic music scores sometimes feel like they don't really keep up with the game's pace. Yoko Shimomura's music score in Kingdom Hearts is the gold standard for how themes and leitmotifs can be implemented to steer the story in a certain direction. In Kingdom Hearts, variants of a single theme are meant not to coincide with the level of action, like a dynamic music score, but instead to personify the elements of a story, such as the relationships between characters. Xion's theme, Vector to the Heavens, shares a bit of melody with Kairi's theme if you listen. This is because the character Xion was formed using the memories of Sora, and since Kairi and Sora have one of the strongest relationships in the game's lore, Kairi is whom she physically resembles. And the way these two tracks share certain melodies is a subtle insinuation of that. You can hear this in Kingdom Hearts 2 as well, when comparing the themes of the characters Roxas and Sora during the prologue of the game in Twilight Town. Both tracks have a similar tempo and stride, but the way the melodies are arranged gives each track its own unique energy. Adversely, you can hear discrepancies in the game's introduction theme, Dearly Beloved. And with just a few changes in tempo and dynamics, this one simple arrangement of notes can tell just about any story you'd like, from a story of valiance and determination to a flashback of peaceful nostalgia, and even a tale of inevitable tragedy and death. Going further into the three mainline games, you can hear slight variations of certain boss themes and battle tracks that have been altered, albeit kept largely the same. Take a listen to how some of the themes have progressed all the way from Kingdom Hearts 2 to Kingdom Hearts 3, almost 13 years later. As Yoko Shimomura states in an interview, she wanted listeners to be able to imagine the continuing story of a character based almost exclusively on their musical theme. If we listen to some of the themes given to Aqua, for instance, a very integral character in the latter half of Kingdom Hearts lore, her musical theme evolves with her circumstances, and without really receiving much insight from dialogue or text or anything like that, you can piece together almost the entirety of Aqua's quest using only the emotions you get from her music. The arrangements explore Aqua's despair in losing her friends, and consequently losing even herself to the realm of darkness. In Birth by Sleep, Aqua's theme explores the futility of fighting against the darkness, and her terribly heavy burden in trying to keep the Wayfinder trio together, despite the darkness basically pulling them apart. The theme personifies Aqua's impending and inevitable capitulation to the dark as a result of selflessly rescuing Terra from darkness of his own. In 2.8, the same theme is used during Phantom Aqua's boss battle, only with a more staccato melody with notes that are sharply detached and very separated, which in turn creates a really unnerving track that complements the jolting encounter. And in Kingdom Hearts' third and presumably final mainline game, Sora and Riku dive deep into the abyss of darkness to retrieve Aqua, who has by now fully relinquished herself to the power of darkness. During her fight, the same theme is accompanied with low-stringed instruments at a marching tempo, playing on top of a vocal choir to create this really driving, high-stakes battle track. Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, two of Square Enix's most illustrious IPs, were also two of the most recognizable examples where the music score contributed to and added extra layers of depth and emotion to storytelling in a video game. In 2004, Square Enix announced a Final Fantasy orchestral music concert in North America, bringing the popularity of such music scores to the Western Hemisphere. Nowadays, these sorts of epic music tracks seem ubiquitous and kind of necessary, especially if you're wanting a game to feel like anything even somewhat adventurous. From the Soul series, to Monster Hunter, to Nier, and even an almost exclusively action-focused game like 2016's Doom isn't without its fair share of wide organic choir tracks. Thanks to the brilliance of Square Enix's music composers, and especially Yoko Shimomura, Kingdom Hearts has established a gold standard in both music and in storytelling. It has a driving, high-intensity orchestral music score with just enough whimsicality to remind players not to take their adventures too seriously. It really does capture a wonderful nostalgia that pulls you into a universe you would have otherwise outgrown 13 years ago. And as soon as I'm done typing this, I'm probably going to play it some more. Thanks for tuning into The Forge, I'm Rusty, and I'll see you next time. Take care.